In history dating back to the 18th century during the reign of King Frederick the Great of Prussia. During this period, organizational flags were developed with color arrangements and symbols unique to each particular organization. The very soul of a military unit is symbolized in the colors under which it fights. They are a record of past glories, stand guardian over its present destiny, and ensure inspiration for its future. The colors lead the unit into battle. When in action, resolve not to part with the colors, but with your life. Today, the colors serve as a binding symbol of continuity and point of inspiration for the future. Commanders and soldiers come and go, but the colors remain steadfast. To this flag and commander, the soldiers of the unit would dedicate their loyalty and trust. When a change of command was to take place, the flag was passed to the individual assuming command. This gesture was accomplished in front of the unit so that all could see and witness their new commander assuming his dutiful position. This symbolic tradition has survived throughout military history, and this morning is a key event in the history of the 3rd Armored Corps. By authority of Army Regulation 600-20, paragraph 2-8 alpha, the undersigned assumes command of 3 Corps in Fort Hood, effective 20 December 2012. Signed, Lieutenant General Mark A. Milley, United States Army Commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Forces Commanding General, General David M. Rodriguez.
Good morning and welcome to the family and friends of 3 Corps in Fort Hood on this perfect day to embrace a new team to lead this Corps and this installation. I was just here last month, a few days after Thanksgiving, on this same parade field as we bid farewell to the Campbells. And now back a few days before Christmas on that same beautiful parade field with many of the same people welcoming the Milleys. There must be something about Central Texas and Fort Hood that keeps making me want to come back. I want to offer a special welcome to the soldiers, the civilians and families of 3 Corps, the elected officials, community leaders, and many friends of the Milleys attending from across Central Texas area and the country. Thank you for being with us today. We have several distinguished guests with us. U.S. Representative-elect from the 25th Congressional District, Mr. Roger Williams, Mr. John Etu, representing Senator Kay Hutchinson's office, Mr. Greg Schnapp, representing Congressman Carter's office, Ms. Sandy Edwards, representing Senator John Cornyn's office, civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, Mr. and Mrs. Jean Shine, good to see you again, Mayor and Mrs. Dan Corbin of Killeen, Mayor and Mrs. John Hull of Coppers Cove, Mayor Mike Aycock of Harker Heights, Mayor Christina Rosenthal of Nolanville, former Commanding General of Forces Command, General Retired Robert Shoemaker, and to other flag and general officers, active and retired, the Fort Hood good neighbors and friends attending today, thanks for all that you do and all you've done for our soldiers and their families. Welcome, of course, to Holly Ann, General Milley's wife, and we're glad that somebody bought her flowers today, Mark, because we knew you weren't going to. Peter Milley, General Milley's son. Unfortunately, his daughter Mary, who's studying in China right now, couldn't make it. And then Amy Bogart's, Holly Ann's sisters, and her 2 children. Thanks for being here and sharing this day with us. And as you know, Mark, Dad, while he can't make it, is here in spirit. An Assumption of Command ceremony is as much about recognizing great soldiers and civilians and Army families as it is about the incoming commander, and today is no exception. The men and women of Fort Hood at the Great Place and this entire command are well represented this morning by the troops standing on the parade ground to the front of you. And from where I stand, I'd say they're representing them honorably and well. And as you can imagine out there, Those great and mighty colors from each of those units are being pushed pretty hard by that wind today, but those Army strong soldiers will keep them where they need to be. Please join me in a round of applause for all of them. Thank you. Today we install a special officer and a special Army family to lead the Phantom Corps. And on behalf of the entire FORCECOM team, let me extend our congratulations to Lieutenant General Mark Milley and to his wife Holly Ann, and to their many friends who are here today. This assumption is a special event, a military tradition for many, many years that signifies that transfer of responsibility from mission and soldiers. And this officer is keenly aware of the mission, capabilities, and the reputation of this command, and we're proud to add his name to the list of those commanders who have commanded since its initial activation in 1918, just a short 94 years ago that this Corps has served the nation. General Milley is a proven combat leader, capable and worthy of the increased responsibility we put on his shoulders today. He brings a wealth of experience and proven leadership to this Corps and to this military community. For the past 32 years, he had some of the most challenging assignments in our Army, and those same jobs and experiences make him uniquely qualified to lead this unit and these soldiers in a time when we remain engaged in a protracted conflict and the international security environment we all face. Mark has extensive experience and is one of the most seasoned combat leaders in our Army today, and his record bears that out. Starting off as a battalion operations officer, he deployed for Operation Just Cause in Panama, a different century and a different world. As a battalion operations officer at the 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain, he deployed for Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti. He then deployed as the commander of Task Force Eagle to Multinational Division North in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and then less than 8 months later deployed his 2nd Brigade combat team out of 10th Mountain Division into Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom. And then of course took a short 6-month break, and then that brigade returned to Iraq once again for Operation Iraqi Freedom. His leadership as a general officer as well, deploying with the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault as the Deputy Commanding General for Operation Enduring Freedom. And all this time deployed taught Mark much about the leadership and mission accomplishment, as well as learning the skills of working harder and sleeping faster. And I know the 3rd Corps staff is going to figure that out here in the coming months. Now he reports for duty as the Phantom 6 after serving as the commander of 10th Mountain Division. And he has established his reputation Army-wide and throughout the Joint Force as a splendid soldier, a superb leader, and a joint warfighter, a critical skill to have as the Army remains an integral part of the joint interagency, intergovernmental, and multinational operating environment. And I'm confident that he'll continue to make the command more capable and more effective. And he'll put his extensive leadership experience to work here as he prepares the men and women of this command for the challenges that lie ahead in the upcoming deployment to Afghanistan. Mark is also an expert at building teams, and he has that innate ability to draw out the strengths of disparate forces and combine these strengths into a team and focus that team's effort on mission accomplishment, an essential attribute that will be well needed in the coalition in Afghanistan. He is joined by his wife and life partner, Holly Ann, who brings energy, warmth, and experience to this community, this great post, and the families who live and work here. Now, you might think she looks a little bit cold today, but this is nothing compared to upstate New York. Holly Ann cares deeply for soldiers and their families, and she has enriched the quality of life in the community she and Mark have called home. She inspires others to make a difference because on so many occasions she has made a difference herself. During that short time at Fort Drum, she contributed over 900 volunteer hours to the community, the soldiers, and the families. And of course, her #1 volunteer effort, we're very thankful that she continues, which she stays married to Mark. And she is the epitome of volunteerism, and she'll be a perfect fit here at Fort Hood. I also want to express my gratitude to General Jim Richardson for shouldering additional responsibilities as the acting senior commander over the last 2 months. Jim, we've asked a lot of you, and thanks a lot for fulfilling those responsibilities. And to the soldiers, civilians, and families of the 3rd Corps, you're getting another great command team. You're in good hands. I encourage you to continue the mission and thank each and every one of you, your families, and the communities around you for what you do for our Army and our nation every day. Now today we turn the page in the history of this great organization and begin a new chapter. And as we do, we can be sure that the 3rd Corps will continue to answer the nation's call. I have absolutely no doubt that the men and women that stand before you today have always and will always rise to the challenges and accomplish every mission the nation assigns. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Mark and Holly Ann, Freedom's Guardian.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commander of 3 Corps in Fort Hood, Lieutenant General Mark A. Milley.
Yeah, I want to welcome everyone and thank everyone for coming today. And I know it's a little bit of chilly out here and a little bit of wind, and the colors are standing strong. And I do appreciate you all coming here. I'll keep my remarks pretty short out of consideration for everyone here, especially the guys on the field. And I have to tell you what a day what a difference 17 days makes. 17 days ago, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting on the Canadian border in command of America's Light Infantry Division, the 10th Mountain Division. And a guy named Rodriguez gives me a call, followed by a call from Austin, followed by a call from a guy named Odinero. And they said, "Ruck up, Ranger, move out, you're going to Central Texas." And I said, "Oh, what are you really thinking?" I said, "I'm not sure what a tank looks like. Isn't that the Armored Corps down there?" They say, "Yeah, Roger." And they told me, they reminded me, they looked at my ORB and they said, "You were originally commissioned as an armor officer. And you've been dodging the bullet for 32 years there, big fella." So I said, "Oh." And then they said, "Get on a plane and get to Germany." Of course, I never served in Germany either, so that was good. And 12 inches of snow showed up over there, and we did the mission rehearsal exercise in preparation for execution combat operations later next year in Afghanistan. Meeting folks I had not met before in my life except for Jim Richardson and a few others. But for the most part, new folks. And they performed, you should all know, that the 3 Corps staff in Germany on the rehearsal exercise performed magnificently. And then 96 hours ago, I stepped foot on Fort Hood for the first time in my life. I had been to Texas before, went to Dallas and drove through Texas on the way out to the 7th Division a long time ago. But that was it. Never been to Fort Hood. And I got to tell you, this is not the great place. This is the greatest place. How do you like that? That's a sound bite. How's that? So, but seriously, it is. In 96 hours, more people from this installation and the surrounding communities, many of whom I don't even know names, have wrapped their arms around Holly and I and have showed us the love and the warmth of Central Texas. And I have to tell you, that speaks volumes. The tremendous whirlwind that we've been going through in the last couple of weeks, to know that you're a part of a family, to know that you're welcomed in a place you've never been, and to know that the heart and soul of this installation is there to help you, that is a reassuring thought for a guy like me. So the Milley family thanks all of you, most of whom I don't know, from the bottom of our hearts. And distinguished guests, and General Rodriguez, I thanked you earlier, but General Rodriguez and Odinero and Austin, we have some seriously seasoned combat general officers in our Army today. And this one sitting here in front of us today has been a personal mentor of mine for almost 2 decades. And Sergeant Major Bonds here, thank you also for coming and representing all the sergeants and non-commissioned officers throughout FORSCOM. This Army could not run without sergeants, and I'm the son of one. And Hank Beck is here, who helped unfurl the flag, a combat veteran from Vietnam. And this Army cannot run without the unbelievable competence and skill of our non-commissioned officer corps. And thanks, Sergeant Major Bond, for being here to represent all of them. And on the field before you are the commanders and colors of this great corps, representing 50,000 soldiers, another 80,000 family members, 230,000 folks in the community, retirees and others that work, live, or use Fort Hood. And the senior non-commissioned officer here is Sergeant Major Schroeder, a man I've served with in both peace and war. And he is a serious soldier. He is a warrior. And he represents everything that the non-commissioned officers should be. And thank you, Sergeant Major Schroeder. Thanks, J.J. Love. And thanks to all the commanders in colors. And how about another round of applause for all of them? I want to also mention thanks to some folks. I probably got some names wrong. I'd ask your forgiveness for that. But Congressman Roger William, appreciate your support. He shook my hand a few minutes ago, and I know that you and I will be close, and I know that your continued support of Fort Hood will remain steadfast. And to the mayors of Killeen and Harker Heights and Coppers Cove and Nolanville, thank you also. And most importantly, I also want to thank the former Corps commanders, you know, General Shoemaker and retired Lieutenant Generals Graves and Taylor and Funk, and there's several others out there, not the least of which is my boss's boss, Odie Nero. And I know full well I'll get a lot of help down here in the mighty 3 Corps. And I appreciate it, I need it, and I welcome it. And I might also note that General Shoemaker was a major when I was born. I mean, think about that. And Lieutenant General Graves was commissioned 16 days before my birth. That was Second Lieutenant Graves, 16 days before I was born. But what that tells me, and the fact that they're at this ceremony, it talks volumes about the continuity and the support that this community gets from our veterans. And so thank you, sirs, for being here. Thanks also to all the fellow general officers and all of the soldiers and everyone here that's represented. I do want to just say a couple of words about kind of what's ahead and where I've been. And contrary to popular belief, and contrary to the program, this is not my first time serving with soldiers from Fort Hood. I had the privilege, and it was a privilege, of leading the 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, and we were attached to the 1st Team, the 1st Cavalry Division in Baghdad. And it was then commanded by General Corelli. And at my first meeting with then Pegasus 6, I looked down and I stared at some funny boots he was wearing. And I realized, being a light infantryman, that the good general was out of uniform. And of course, I've never met him before, and neither had he met me. So I could not resist letting him know that he was out of uniform. And I think most of you probably know Corelli. And so his response to an upstart light infantry colonel that he'd never met, I quickly, rapidly, and rigidly assumed the position of attention. And I quickly learned that those weren't just any boots. Those were tanker boots with their little belt buckles. But to Corelli's credit, he didn't hold that against me. And he and the entire 1st Cavalry team, men like Jim McConville, who currently commands the 101st Airborne Division, and Bob Abrams, Abe Abrams, who currently commands the 3rd Infantry Division, committed in RC South in Afghanistan, and several others, fellow brigade commanders, they all wrapped their arms around a brigade that didn't wear their badge and didn't come from their culture. And I and all of us who served in that time will never forget, will be forever in debt to the tanks and the Bradleys and the Apaches that applied unrelenting firepower in support of me and my soldiers in some very, very bloody situations. And as I join this team, I recognize now that I might actually get a Stetson and buy some cowboy boots, but I have sent an email to Corelli. I'm still thinking long and hard about this tanker boot thing. Hey, look it, from the battlefields of World War I, and you've read the program, to the battlefields of World War II, you know, the Meuse-Argonne, the Metz, Siegfried Line, crossing the Rhine, and then assaulting into the heart of Nazi Germany, capturing 220,000 Nazi soldiers, securing 4,500 square miles of German territory. This Corps has brought unrelenting pressure against the enemies of our country for over 100 years. And then if you look at just the last 12 years, our Army has sent almost 2 million soldiers into combat into Afghanistan and Iraq. And this fort has sent 250,000 of them. Over 20% of every single man and woman who wears the Army uniform, active and reserve, that served in either in Iraq or Afghanistan, has come through this post. The amount of sacrifice and talent that is represented here is unbelievable. And I will tell you, it's not going to end this year. You know that. Ahead of us is a tough fight. This Corps has fought under Metz and Odinero and then Cone. And now this Corps headquarters is preparing to deploy yet again. And while we're preparing to deploy, we already have a brigade over there from the 1st Cav, and another one going later. And we will continue to beat the enemies of our country. And this time we go to Afghanistan, and although the location is different, it doesn't matter. Whether it's the Musargan, or Bastogne, or Baghdad, or Konar, or Paktika, the cause is the same and the mission is the same. It's to defend freedom, it's to liberate the oppressed, and it's to build a better peace. And in Afghanistan, we will go over there and we will advise and assist the Afghan National Security Forces stand up and protect and defend their own people. And we will do that in a professional way, and then over the course of time, we will redeploy our forces and all of our equipment. It's an extraordinarily complex, dangerous, and tough mission. But I have absolutely no doubt that the seasoned officers and non-commissioned officers and soldiers of this Corps are up to the task. And I have no doubt that we will lead all of our American soldiers and NATO soldiers to the successful accomplishment of our mission. Finally, I'd like to just close by thanking all of you again, and most importantly, thanking the families of this great post. And it is the families, the husbands and the wives, and the fathers and the mothers and the sons and the daughters, who've had to bear the heaviest burden during the last 12 years. It is you who have given the 3 Corps the strength to overcome all of the obstacles on every deployment. And thanks also to the communities that wrap their arms around Fort Hood. It is you who makes this the great place. And thanks to the previous commanders, General Campbell did a great job, and all of the previous commanders here that have formed the very culture and backbone of this post. And last but not least, I want to thank my family publicly. And I mentioned some words inside, and I won't go on. But my mother and father are both World War II veterans. And I got a note from one of my battalion commanders, long since retired. And he said, okay, you're about to pin on 3-star. Don't forget where you came from. Don't get all full of yourself there, big fella. Don't forget where you came from. And I won't. My father hit the beach at Iwo Jima. And I'll never forget the things he told me. And I want to also thank my wife, Holly Ann, my son, Peter, and my daughter, Mary, for their incredible support over the years. The hills get higher and higher, and we will continue to climb them. But all of you make me so very proud. And I look forward to serving here. I look forward to serving with the great soldiers of this Corps, and I look forward to leading them in combat in a very short amount of time. Army strong, Phantom Warriors, America's hammer.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Private First Class Alvin Lin is presenting the traditional first round fired to Lieutenant General Milley, welcoming him to Fort Hood the Great Place. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the retiring of the colors and render the appropriate honors as the colors are retired, and remain standing for the playing and singing of the Third Corps March and the Army Song.